the KTM Super Duke R1290. I was on the launch of the first one of these 1290 Super Dukes, and that was quite a few years ago now. And straight away, it kind of cemented itself as a ballistic, nonsense, naked bike and a ridiculously good fun track bike. It's not got a fairing, it's not a race bike. They don't race them in World Superbikes. But from the off, these Super Dukes have been really, really good fun to ride flat out on track. Not the fastest, not the best lap times, but really good fun to ride flat out around a racetrack. So, onto the third generation Super Duke 1290R, R1290, Super Duke R, it's all written on the side there. So third generation one, yeah, again, brilliant track bike. They've made it faster, they've made it lighter, they've made it more refined in the suspension department, and it's got lots of electric-y stuff. So you'd think it would be all about 130 mile an hour wheelies and knee-down track fun. And it was. We went and rode this at Portimao Circuit at the beginning of this year, and I don't think the front wheel touched the ground all day. I had a brilliant day. It was a hell of a lot of fun. So we've kind of proved that bit. Now, I don't think anyone has got Portimao to ride every day. I don't think anyone has that as their commute to work, do they? I certainly don't. This, hands down, is one of the most fun track bikes you can ride. Might not be the fastest, like I said. But what's it actually like in normal life, when you're riding on the roads and it's a bit cloudy and a bit cold? We've got a Super Duke R back here in the UK to go and find out if it makes a good road bike or if it's just a nonsense toy for people who can do track days. I don't really need these levers on for this, so I'm going to put some normal road rider clothes on and my normal road rider head on. But before we get out on the road, these videos only happen because of the support and help from our sponsors. If you need insurance for your bike, go and check out Bike Devil. Support the companies that support us. Everybody, I would like you to meet Monday Morning Chris. He's just as much of an idiot as normal Chris, but he wears comfortable clothes. So, this is a KTM Super Duke R. I am dressed for a long road ride. I'm going to go and ride the wheels off this thing and see if riding a mental 180 horsepower bike actually makes sense on the roads of Britain. I can't wait. That thing is a handful. I love it. We've been living with the, I have been living with the Super Duke R1290 now for a good few weeks. We had a wicked time on the launch in Portimao. Did I mention I used to race? I did wheelies the start finish straight, big fifth gear wheelies everywhere, drifty, knee downy. It was epic. It was such a fun track bike. Not the fastest track bike, but one of the absolutely the most fun things to ride on track. But this iteration of Super Duke, KTM has actually tried to make it more sophisticated. They've tried to make it a bit more accessible for everyone and a bit better behaved in terms of the suspension and the chassis and the electronics that control the beast. That's kind of a first for me for Super Dukes. If you think back throughout the years from the 950s, the 990s, and then to this latest one, they've generally always got more mental as things have gone on. And this is the first one where they've kind of said, right, let's make the riding modes work properly, more effective traction control, let's make the suspension more sophisticated so it works in a wider range of conditions. Now, you might be worried they've gone soft. They absolutely haven't, and on track it proved that. It proved to be just as wild, just as sharp-edged as Super Dukes have always been. We wanted to get it onto the road in normal conditions, in normal riding kit, and see if they had managed to make it any better, any softer, or if it's just mental and a waste of time on tarmac. It's definitely mental. There is no way around that. It's 180 horsepower, but it's the way it delivers that power and it's the torque that it makes absolutely dominates the riding experience on this bike. Whether that's a good or a bad thing is kind of down to you. I quite like it most days, and on the days when I'm tired and feeling like I don't want to be riding 200 miles on a bike and I just want to get home, on those days it can be a little bit hard work. That's where you've got to use the riding modes to put it into a calmer setting, but you still got to keep one eye on it. It's a 180 horsepower bike with a powerful throttle response and an immediate drive in any gear. There is really no way to hide that whatever mode you're in. It is a ballistically quick motorcycle. Which brings me to riding it on the road. Now, the chassis is doing its best. It doesn't do anything wrong. It steers really, really well. It stays stable. It never slaps the bars. It never fights, but it's always feeling like the engine's trying to overpower the chassis. It's like the engine's this sort of big metal box that's got a Tasmanian devil trying to get out of it. It's fighting and the front's kicking, and it's always trying to make you do things that you maybe didn't want to, or if you did, you wouldn't admit to wanting to do. So the chassis does a really good job. The electronics keep everything calm, but when you wind the electronics back and free the motor up, it is an absolute handful, in a good way. If you go full gas on this, on most roads, it is wheelie, 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 skip, wheel spin, jump, wheelie, 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 skip, wheel spin, just on this mental loop back and forth for the whole ride. And you get to the end of it with a massive smile on your face, but honestly, exhausted. I've had some awesome rides on this bike in all weathers, like wet weather, slippery, cold, damp, horrible days through to sunny days. But whenever I get off it after a day's riding, I am exhausted because just the mental and physical strain of hanging onto it and trying to peg it back when it's running away from you is brilliant. It's brilliant. And I think that's the best way to sum it up as a road bike. Intense. Everything about it is intense, from the styling, the colour scheme, the engine note. It is a bike that just pushes and pushes and pushes. And if that's what you want from a bike, you'll love this thing. It is absolutely crackers. If you're looking for a comfortable, smooth touring bike, it ain't for you. Maybe the Super Duke GT is, but I suspect that's just as mental. But if you're looking for a bike that puts a huge smile on your face every time you ride it and has performance capable of running with the best of the latest sports bikes, the Super Duke R1290 is that bike. It is a fun machine. It's not the most sophisticated package on the road. It's not the smoothest riding bike I've ever ridden, but it is absolutely wild. Thanks, KTM. Thank you for still making insane motorcycles. Let's talk practical. It's not something I'm normally good at doing, but living with this bike on a day-to-day basis, there are a handful of things that have irritated me some days, pissed me off on other days. First one of those, and the one that I notice every time I get on the bike, is the turning circle. It's not a cool thing to talk about, how tight a bike can turn in a circle, but definitely when you're trying to maneuver out of a tight garage, turn it round in your driveway or filter through traffic, the steering lock is quite limited on the Super Duke. Not a big problem when you're out enjoying the sporty roads it was made for, but as a practical day-to-day bike, that is a little bit annoying. Second thing that annoyed me is the headlight. In some ways it's brilliant. It is incredibly bright and has a very, very good beam going forwards. But if you're riding late at night, you can see loads in a straight line, you tip into a bend, and the spread of the headlight isn't very good. So you can see loads that way, so you go really fast, tip into a corner, and suddenly you're sort of looking into this dark abyss, hoping that the road is where you thought it was. Being that I was trying to use this bike for everything, I would have liked a better spread of lighting without having to bolt on spotlights all over it. Final little grizzle, had squeaky brakes. Not really sure why. They worked fine, braking form was good, never had a problem, but the brakes kept squeaking. I don't know if that's a Brembo thing or a KTM thing or just that bike thing, but the brakes squeaked, and that was a bit annoying on a modern new bike. You expect it from an old junker, but yeah, that was a bit of an odd one. Now, using the bike on a day-to-day basis was brilliant from my point of view because it meant I got to learn all the controls. Some bikes you can jump on and the controls are very intuitive straight away. Some bikes less so. This is pretty good, but it took me a while to work my way out around all the menus. But learning all that stuff means that you kind of unlock the potential of the bike and you can actually use all those modes a lot better. And one thing that is always, always, always a grizzle with modern electronic systems is whether they turn themselves automatically back on when you switch the bike off and on, which, like most, this one does. And the same with the ABS. If you switch it off, if it stays off, or whether it then turns itself back on. However, the ABS has a Supermoto mode. So if you set it to Supermoto mode, you get ABS on the front wheel, but you can still do stoppies and you can still do skids, but what you can't do is lock the front tyre. And actually, that's kind of a better position than turning it off for me. I like having that comfort that whatever happens, I can hit the front brake and it's not going to lock, but I can still do the skids and stunts that I want to do. And if you put it in supermoto mode, it stays in that mode. So from that point of view, I have no problem at all. And it was really nice to have that chance to do that with the supermoto mode ABS. The traction control, again, similar story. You can turn wheelie control off. So I turned the wheelie control off and it would let me do wheelies and lift the front over crests, but I still had the safety net of the traction control. Should I overstep the mark, it wasn't going to let me high side. So yes, they turn themselves back on, but they do so in a way that doesn't really interfere with your enjoyment of riding. The Beast, or the Beast 3.0 as KTM call it, because it's the third Beast 1290. I'm not quite sure about their names, but I think if you had one of them as an everyday bike, you would enjoy it massively on the good days, and on the cold, wet days, and the damp days, and the days when you're tired. I think it's quite a lot of bike on those days, and I think you might find it tiresome. Maybe that's just me, maybe I'm getting old, but that's my thought of that bike. It is a ballistic sports bike, an awesome fun road bike, and it'll absolutely travel, tour, commute till your heart's content, but you have to be prepared for the fact that it will take more energy out of you than a travel, touring, commuting bike would. And if you kind of set that stall out at the beginning, you love it for what it does well, which is go fast, accelerate hard, and put a massive smile on your face. In those three categories, there aren't many bikes that are as intense as this and as accomplished as this on the road. And for that reason, yeah, as a sports road bike, Super Duke is brilliant. It is better behaved than the old one. It has more electronic control and better chassis control that lets you ride it hard and fast on the road without it tying itself completely in knots. But there's no getting around the fact that it is a 1290 or 1300cc V-twin with oodles of power everywhere. It is fast, it is intense, it is bright orange, and I love it, but I'm still a little bit scared of it.